She loved how he was emotionless until her mom was in the hospital due to heart surgery, and she wanted him to comfort her, but he physically couldn't cause he was so empty inside. A week of travel had left me hollowed out. Dragging my exhausted body and my suitcase home at 3 in the morning, I was ready for nothing more than a scalding hot shower, but the blast of water, set to a precise 113 degrees Fahrenheit, hit my skin like a brand, making me gasp and jerk back. My husband, Holden Kincaid, a decorated Marine captain and a drill instructor at the academy, was a human furnace. His water temperature never, ever, crossed 104 degrees. The scorching setting belonged to my cousin, Cassidy Lane, the one who was chronically fragile and always cold. In that instant, the truth of my marriage hit me with the force of a 1,000-pound weight. What followed wasn't hysterics. It was a surgical, calibrated plan. While he and my delicate cousin played out their nauseating charade, I calmly divorced him, reclaimed my career as a sought-after clinical dietitian, and watched my life skyrocket. When he finally realized the elaborate deception he'd fallen for and came crawling back, I was standing at the pinnacle of my professional world, next to a man who truly valued me. Audra, I was wrong. I didn't know what I had when I had it. Captain Kincaid, I told him, the words ice on my tongue. What you don't fight for, you don't deserve. The scorching water, 3 in the morning. I twisted the key in the lock, the click echoing in the pre-dawn quiet, and dragged my suitcase into the foyer. A week of back-to-back consulting appointments had completely drained me. All I wanted was to melt into a familiar hot bath and wash the exhaustion out of my bones. The house was silent. Holden was at the base barracks, which was our normal. As a Marine captain and the senior drill instructor, his schedule was rigid, his routine as reliable as a Swiss chronometer. I walked into the master bathroom. The soft, buttery glow of the vanity light was a small comfort. The sight of his electric razor and the expensive, wood-scented moisturizer I'd bought him a familiar pattern of domesticity. Everything looked exactly as I had left it. I stripped off my clothes and reached for the shower knob. Ag! A torrent of scalding water hit my shoulder, the heat stinging my skin, forcing me to flinch backward. I stared at the spot where the water had struck. My heart, in one swift beat, felt like it was seized by an invisible hand. My breath caught in my throat. On the digital temperature gauge embedded in the wall, the red numbers glowed clearly. 113 degrees F. The blood drained from my face, a slow, sickening creep of ice through my veins. Holden, my husband, a man whose fear of being burned was legendary, a man his company referred to as a human boiler because of his body heat. He showered in water that was barely warm, never touching 105 degrees. 3 years of marriage. I had adjusted that water temperature for him countless times. His habits were etched into my muscle memory. In this house, besides him and me, only one other person had ever used a temperature that high. My distant cousin, Cassidy Lane. She was the picture of fragile femininity, perpetually cold, requiring baths so hot they steamed the mirrors, claiming anything less would make her catch a cold. 6 months ago, she'd graduated college, and arrived on our doorstep with a story about wanting to make it in the city, and Holden, with his ridiculous hero complex, had insisted she stay in our guest room indefinitely. A week ago, when I left for my business trip, Holden had told me he was moving into the barracks for a week-long, intensive, no-contact training exercise. So, who had left the shower set to 113 degrees F? I gripped the edge of the cold marble counter, fighting the sharp, piercing pain in my chest that threatened to buckle my knees. I forced my vision to sharpen, scanning the room like a forensic technician. The air, usually scented with my crisp citrus body wash, carried a faint, cloying whiff of sweet gardenia, Cassidy's signature perfume. My eyes settled on the small trash can tucked in the corner. I pulled on a disposable glove, and began methodically sifting through the contents. A few used cotton pads, an empty yogurt cup, and then, at the very bottom, beneath the crumpled tissue, I spotted it. I pinched a single, long hair between my gloved fingers. It was straight, slick, and jet black, not my thick, ash blonde waves. It was exactly the color and texture of Cassidy Lane's hair. I shut off the searing water, letting the cold air envelop my naked body. The sting of the hot water was long forgotten, eclipsed by the brutal, paralyzing cold that had settled deep in my core. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the urge to scream or even question him. The evidence of his betrayal was as undeniable as the scorch mark the water had left on my skin. I quietly wrapped the hair in a paper towel, tucked it deep into the zippered compartment of my toiletry bag, and went to the bedroom. I pulled the blackout shades and lay down in the total darkness. My mind, despite the exhaustion and the monumental shock, was unnervingly clear. Holden Kincaid, the man who had promised me loyalty, devotion, and forever. We were over, but I wasn't going to simply walk away. The war he had started with his casual betrayal, I would finish. I would draw the final line. A flawless, devastating masterpiece of a period. The silent accusation. I woke up at 7, precisely on schedule. Holden usually returned from the barracks around 8 to change and grab the breakfast I always prepared. I walked into the kitchen and pulled out his usual ingredients, kale and spinach, chicken breast, 2 eggs, and a small cup of organic blueberries. As a clinical dietitian, I had perfected his diet, maintaining his body composition at peak performance. At 8 sharp, the lock turned. Holden's tall, powerful frame appeared in the doorway, clad in his crisp fatigues. His short military haircut was immaculate, his brow stern, but his eyes softened when he saw me. He paused, a flicker of surprise in his expression. Audra, you're back. You didn't say anything. He started to walk toward me, the familiar move to pull me into his arms. I smoothly stepped past him, avoiding the contact, and set the breakfast plate on the table. Just got in. Didn't want to mess up your routine. Go shower. Breakfast is ready. His arm dropped, a slight, almost imperceptible frown on his face, but he shrugged it off and headed to the bathroom. A moment later, I heard his voice, laced with mild annoyance. Audra, why is the water boiling hot? My chest tightened, but my expression remained neutral. He emerged, his hair dripping, his handsome face marred by a familiar impatience. Did you forget to set the thermostat again? I slid a glass of lukewarm water across the table to him. My voice was utterly flat. Really? I felt the same thing. When I showered yesterday, nearly burned myself. I figured you must have accidentally messed with the settings before you left. Holden's gaze flickered away, a noticeable tremor in his control. He gulped the water, his voice slightly muffled. Impossible. I hate hot water. You must be mistaken. He was such a clumsy liar. I didn't press him. I simply watched him eat. He ate quickly, but his concentration was shot. His eyes met mine several times, only to dart away immediately. Finally, he wiped his mouth with a napkin, and prepared to get up. Holden, I said. The single word, quiet yet firm, froze him in place. We need to talk. Sorry, due to copyright issues I am unable to continue updating the next chapter. If you like the book. If you like this book, insert 353807 on Moda Novel to read this book.